It's Retro Podcasts with your host, Retro Lion. We talk music, entertainment, films, and more. And now, here he is, live, Retro Lion.
Welcome back to Retro Podcast. I am the host, and we have Joel McKinnon Miller here today to discuss on our episode. Well, it's great to see you, Mr. McMiller. Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. I just got back from Vegas.
Vegas, the city that never sleeps. No, that's New York, isn't it? Anyway, whatever happens in Vegas, you leave it in Vegas, right?
That is correct.
So I'm not going to ask you one thing about Vegas because you're not going to tell me anyway because it's all there. Right? Okay.
Vegas stays in Vegas.
Okay.
And it's been 13 years since the movie Super 8 came out. What was your experience getting to work on the film with J.J. Abrams and Steven Spielberg?
Well, I think that was a real treat working with J.J. Abrams because I had never worked with someone that was so organized from one shot to the next. He knew immediately what was going to happen next within a scene, and it was so fluid and fast, and it was very impressive. So I really enjoyed working with him very much. And then one day when I was working, and maybe other days when I wasn't there, Steven Spielberg would come by, and so we all got to meet him that first day when he came by to visit the set. So that was very memorable, and he was very nice. And then while we were shooting the scenes, he was standing over by the monitor with J.J. Abrams, and they would talk about the shot, and I don't know what they were saying, but maybe they were giving suggestions, or I don't know. It was really cool because that movie was like a homage to Steven Spielberg type films. So, and I know that they're good friends. So it was fun. It was fun to be a part of it.
And when you got the role to be in that film, was it an audition or did they reach out to you?
They reached out to my agent because they thought I would fit the father character. And so then I did audition. And my hair was longer at that time, you'll see in the movie. But the very first scene, they had to add that scene where it's at the funeral and I'm eating a little plate of cake or whatever like that. So filming had already ended. I had gotten back to having a flat top haircut, and they called and they wanted to do some more additional shooting. And I'm like, oh, but I cut my hair, And he said, no problem. And so I thought, well, what are they going to put a wig on? What are we going to do? And when I went in, he just framed it up so that it the frame comes across my forehead. You don't see what my hair is doing. It was kind of brilliant. And we didn't have the location anymore where we originally filmed. So he took an office in his building that we were in, brought in a bookshelf, brought in a window, made this office look like just in this one bit of the frame, like we were in a house and we were standing in a regular generic office building that they just brought in a few props and a few scenery pieces, and we had the house, and it was pretty amazing. And it's the first scene I think it's the first scene of the film.
It was at the beginning of the movie. It starts with the funeral and then it goes to 4 months later, it's summer, and that's where the whole chaos begins.
Right. So, yeah. So it kind of sets it up, that scene. Yeah, so it was also fun. We were filming in a Howard Hughes, it was like a hangar for like blimps, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there were a number of these big hangars that were built at the time of blimps, right? And they were built by Howard Hughes. And these were just enormous buildings. and they were big rounded roofs on them. And so the set for our film looked like like you were looking in a little snow globe. It looked like this little, just this little structure in this huge, huge expanse.
You played a character in Galaxy Quest, and I've also heard that there's an R-rated cut. So which character did you play in Galaxy Quest, and is there an R-rated cut of that movie?
I have no idea if there's an R-rated cut. I played a character within the TV that they're watching at one point where they're doing interviews of people at this, it's like a Comic-Con type thing. And I'm dressed in this incredible makeup to look like one of these characters. And so if you blink, you'll miss me. And I spent more time in makeup than I actually spent making filming anything. So.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And what was your biggest inspiration for wanting to go into acting?
Well, when I was a young boy, I still am a singer. I started out as a singer, and I started college as an opera singer. And then I started doing plays. And I thought, well, maybe I like doing that better. And then I started doing musical theater. Well, I kind of like that. And so I jumped around a bit. And then I ended up in New York City with a company called John Houseman's Acting Company. And I toured the United States for 3 years doing Shakespeare. Had gotten married right before we had left. And my wife was a part of the tour as well. She was the wig mistress and the assistant wardrobe on the tour. So we spent our first 3 years of marriage in a bus traveling all over the United States. And that was an incredible experience. And that's what got me an agent in New York, because we'd end every 3 months, we'd go out on the road, and then we'd come back and put another play together. So we had a big repertory of plays that we would end up touring to universities and civic auditoriums around the country. And so we'd put another play together, and then at the end of the season, right, in the late spring, we would always have a 2-week run off Broadway of our plays. And so that's where everyone would invite agents and people like that to come and see the plays. And that's where I got my agents were there. And then they opened a place in Los Angeles. So we moved to Los Angeles in 1991, started a film and television career. So it's been quite an adventure. We lived in Brooklyn, New York for 7 years and then moved to Los Angeles. I just loved playing different people, and I just loved that kind of work. And so I don't know if I had one person or one instance that I could point out as my inspiration. I just think I liked what it felt like to get up and sing or perform. And when I was real little, I was 5, 6 years old, I would sing hymns for my grandmothers. And so my one grandmother in particular, when we would get together, I would sing, and my cousins would be there, and they knew, oh, he's going to make some money, because my aunts and uncles would give me coins. And then I would take the coins and go down to the candy store and buy candy, and I'd bring it back and dump it on the bed, and I'd share it all with all my cousins. So they liked when I showed up at a family party, because they knew I'd probably sing for my grandma. And so that's kind of how it started, as a little kid singing, for things.
Very cool. Speaking of New York City, you were in a show called Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Your co-star Andre passed away this past year. Were you guys friends? Did you know each other before Brooklyn Nine-Nine, or how did that story work?
Andre was a couple years younger than I, but we were both in New York around the same period in the mid to late 80s. And I had certainly heard of him, and one of my favorite movies at the time was Glory, because he's fantastic in it as a young actor, and he was just so good. And I've watched it hundreds of times anyway, so I was a fan of his for sure. And then to get to work with him and see how he worked, and he was very professional, and we were kind of worked the same way. In a way, we were always prepared, and we just are there to do our job and then go home and be with our family. And he had a lovely wife and 3 boys, and I think about them often and how hard it must be to have him not there anymore. He passed away in December, and when he passed away, I was performing the role of Scrooge in A Christmas Carol at a theater in New Jersey, and he actually lived in New Jersey. And I had thought about reaching out to him to see if he wanted to come and see the play or whatever, but I was so consumed with the play, I didn't really have a lot of room to be thinking about anything else, because I hadn't done a play in 32 years. So to be asked to do Scrooge and to be on stage all but 2 minutes in the first and second act, because you're doing a quick change, there was a lot of stage time, and I had a lot of things to memorize, and so I was kind of lax in reaching out to people. My wife finally came and arranged for my family to come and stuff, so that was all good. But when Andre passed away, we were notified by our showrunner Dan Gore, and we weren't to say anything because it wasn't public knowledge yet. And that evening, I had to do a performance, and I would always go up early before the show started, and I would sit on Scrooge's bed and just kind of sit there and kind of get myself ready to do the show. And when there was an actress passing by, and she saw me sitting there, and I must have had I don't know, a sad look on my face or something. And she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Well, I'm not really." And she goes, "What's the matter?" And I said, "Well, a good friend of mine passed away today, but I can't talk about it." And she goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And so I had to go do a performance being upset, but it went fine. And I felt almost like he was there with me, because he had started in the theater as well, just like myself. So it was kind of a special night I'll always remember.
You've been doing theater for a long time, and I used to do theater as well. I don't act anymore because now I do drawings and podcasts. But there are some projects that I've started to get involved in with. They're not big role parts. They're like small roles, like little minor roles. So for people that are going back into theater, and for those who are starting out in theater, what is the biggest advice you would pass on?
Well, take whatever you can get and just perform. Just keep working on your craft. And people say, "Oh, there's no such thing as a small part." Well, I'm here to tell you, yes, there is. There is such a thing as a small part, but there is not such a thing as an unimportant part, or it would never have been written. So that's a very good way to approach that. Even if you come out and say, "My lord, the king is arrived," or whatever it is you're saying, there's a reason for it. You're a part of everything. So not to belittle that, or it would never have appeared in the script. So just take all the parts you can and just get good at what you do, and somebody will see you or whatever, and could change your fortunes and change your trajectory. So just keep doing. That kind of goes for most anything in your life. If there's something that you are passionate about, you should keep doing it. And that passion may become your career. It may become your way that you make a living,
Very cool.
You may have to. I started out after touring. I became a bartender and a waiter at an Irish pub in Brooklyn, and because I was sitting around waiting for the phone to ring, thinking, well, that was the life of an actor. I toured for 3 years. I had per diem and I got paid every week. And I thought, well, this is it. And it was like, no, you just were fortunate to meet some wonderful people and to start your career that way. But the reality is it doesn't quite happen like that. So I told my wife, I got to find something to do because I'm going nuts here waiting for the phone to ring. And as soon as I got the job and I got myself thinking about something other than myself, I would get calls to come and do a play at the New York Shakespeare Festival or up in Hartford or the Folger Shakespeare Theater in Washington.
Mhm.
And I would go to my boss and I would say, I got a play. Can I leave? He goes, for how long? I said, 8 weeks. And he goes, well, yes, give me a call 2 weeks before you're done and we'll put you back on the schedule. So I would go off and do the play. I'd call, I'd come back, I'd have all the bad shifts, but all the other workers there were exhausted because they didn't hire somebody to replace me. So they were picking up my end of everything for that 8 weeks. So they'd want days off. And so then I would gladly take up their shifts. And then pretty soon I was back to my old schedule. So it was kind of a game, but I made myself indispensable. And that's something to think about too. Indispensable. Whatever your job is, make yourself indispensable because you may have to ask a favor at some point and they'll be more likely to help you out if they find that you're on your day off and someone didn't show up to work and they call you, can you come in? And I would be right there. I would be right there because I knew I would sometime I'd be able to ask for a favor, like taking a break to go do a play. And it worked out very well. So
When you were saying that you would be right there for a shift, it's like a genie in a bottle. You say the magic words and there he is.
that's right. I would appear.
Yeah. We are coming down to the end of our interview, and we have a famous retro podcast question.
Okay.
Is there a famous retro product that you grew up with? Something that you enjoyed the most or something you wanted back then but couldn't get back then, but you were able to get it later on in life?
Something that you know what? I would say that for me, it would be a typewriter. I have horrible penmanship and I have to write thank you notes now and then. So I had these cool cards made up. They're just a long strip, and my name is printed on top in a kind of old-timey typewriter type. And I put it in my typewriter and I plunk out a few lines of thank you. And then I just sign Joel. Well, they know who it's from because it's all printed out up there. If I didn't have it printed out and I scratched my name, they would probably go, who is this from? And so it's very clear who it's from, and it's very easy to read, and it's kind of fun because you can tell it's a real typewriter that I'm using, because they were always, sometimes the letters are just a little off, or the next line is just a little, funky or whatever, or the ink is not as clear on that letter as it is on the next letter, So it's a very unique way, I think, to do my thank you notes. And I've never been a very good typist. I had typing in junior high school and I was terrible at it. So I'm kind of a hunt and peck fella, even on a computer. But I would say the typewriter would be the thing. I've got three of them. I've got two here in Minnesota, and I've got one in Los Angeles. So whatever place I'm at, and I've got a stack of my thank yous, cards, so I can, if I need to write a thank you to someone or just a note or whatever, I plunk them out of my typewriter.
That's really cool. Actor Tom Hanks has a whole collection of typewriters.
That's right. He wrote a book about typewriters, and my wife just gave it to me, so I need to take a look at it.
Nice. Well, Mr. Miller, thank you again for joining today's episode. Your co-star Riley Griffiths, who played your son in Super 8, is actually going to be on the podcast next week, and we just want to say thank you again for joining today's episode.
Well, thank you for having me, and best of luck to you, Ben.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Spotify and follow us on Instagram. See you next week.